Okay, so this is part two of the presentation. Unfortunately, it got cut off during the first time, but I'm just going to pick up where I left off. So, in 1942, the War Advertising Council was formed to manage voluntary ad campaigns for wartime efforts for World War II. After the war, because obviously World War II ended, it is named the Advertising Council, which is also very important in terms of advertising history, especially for the US. And then we move all the way up to 1975, where the Federal Trade and Commission Improvement Act is passed. Now, with this, the Federal Trade Commissions has increased power to regulate the rules of advertising and also to bring violators of the new rules to court, into federal court actually. And so now we're going to look at the develop of the interpretation and jurisprudence of the First Amendment. Because the First Amendment is generally what we see most often when it comes to any case involving advertisement, because in the First Amendment is freedom of speech. So, increases in advertisement cause increased controversy on the protection of the First Amendment's freedom of speech in advertising. Now, violators would just use that amendment to protect themselves because they'd say, well, we have freedom of speech, so what I'm doing is within constitutional rights. Because of this, because there was still a lot of moments of controversy and disagreements, even though this Constitution amendment is here, research was conducted on how it was meant to be interpreted in situations involving advertising. Now, the research took a long time, a lot of looking into how we originally wanted it to be interpreted and all that, stuff like that. And the research concluded that some speech was not protected at all on the first Constitution. Examples of this type of speech include pornographic speech, criminal speech, just anything involving that just could not even be reasoned with in terms of speech. And then there's other forms that are more innocent that are fully protected under the Constitution's First Amendment. And now we're going to look at ethics in advertising. So, in 1938, the FTC declared unfair or deceptive acts or practices to be unlawful in advertising. Well, it's a little difficult to be able to actually fully apply that to advertising. What is considered fair in advertising is highly debatable. Most court cases regarding advertising still focus on the interpretation of the First Amendment, like we covered earlier, to the circumstances of interest along with the ethical implications of it. Most advertising most advertisements are still protected by the amendment because advertising is backed by free market, which should be trifled with minimally in order to have a successful economy. Another reason for this is because the market is able to partially self-regulate itself by public and private advocacy groups informing the general public about misleading and unethical ads. Especially in today's time where we have really good ways of communicating through media, it's very easy for people that feel wronged by a product in any way to voice their concerns on it to many people very quickly. It's also important to know when talking about ethics in advertising is that knowing the difference between advertisement laws and ethics in advertising is a critical thing to know. Now, there are multiple differences. The first reason is that ethics vary person to person, and law is a more uniform ideology. The second reason being, ethical practices have become less successful and popular in advertisements over time. This is because people have learned what works and what doesn't work, and generally, unethical tactics have been proving to be much more successful, unfortunately. But then again, that's the reason why we have the economy we have today. So it's taking the bad with the good. The third reason being, there are varying levels of agreement in ethics, while law is more rigid. What I mean by this is that law is more black and white in terms of either fully agreeing with the law or not agreeing with it at all. And in terms of ethics, you might partially agree or disagree. There are many levels and forms of agreement with ethics, while law is not exactly like that. And now we're going to wrap up the presentation by going over unethical advertising and its consequences. So for the company I wanted to talk about for this, I'm looking at Marketing Architects Incorporated, which late last year was held accountable for false advertisements on weight loss supplements. Now, it is also important to know that, especially in today's times, false advertisement is the most common form of unethical advertising that we see today. So, what happened was the company was marketing or making atmospheric claims on weight loss achieved on the supplement that they were selling, and also used fictitious testimonials to push the product. The company was also enrolling customers in unauthorized automatic renewals, and also promised Walmart and Target gift cards that never arrived. So, the company was acting in multiple forms of unethical acts, and on top of it all, the biggest thing was their false advertisement. Now, in terms of the consequences, the FTC judged that the company had to pay $2 million in fines as compensation to the affected parties. And this, at this point in time, is the largest amount to ever be fined to an ad agency at this time. And here's some of my references. So, these are mostly my online articles here, and if we continue, I also have the rest of them right here, including these two are my peer-reviewed articles, and that brings the amount of references I have to 7. And that about wraps up the presentation. I hope you learned something from it.